Hello and welcome to the new and improved, yet still the same old classic, Mastering Dungeons, here for 2023.
I'm making
I am
fireworks.
Shawn Merwin here with my co-host, Teos Abadia, who is miming fireworks.
That's good role playing right there.
We should probably change the name of the podcast to Miming Fireworks.
Yeah, that's today's episode is really looking into the history of fireworks.
Yes, except that it's not, because we are still here to talk about all the goodness in Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games and designing and the business side of things and all of that you've come to hopefully come to love about our show. So we are here again for another year of goodness, and we are going to dive right in because we have a lot to talk about, starting with our Tweetbag, Tootbag, Patreon, Missive, YouTube comment, etc. And we start with Wayne Peacock, who on the YouTubes asked the following question. What are your top 5 things that 6E should or could do to make the GM's job easier and more fun?
Wow.
All right, Teos. I'm just seeing this question for the first time,
Yeah.
so I need some time to cogitate. So tell me.
Well, I didn't prep, but so maybe we can even alternate or total up 5. But one that I'll say is that I
Mhm.
think that I would like the rules as we read over the player's handbook, as we look at the 1D&D stuff. I would like the rules to speak to the DM a bit more and converse with them a bit more, right? Like teach the DM. Don't just like I think there's the idea that if the rules are so elegant, you don't need to do anything else. And I don't actually think that's true. I think you do actually have to say to the DM, "Hey, here's what you can do. You have these options. Go about it the following way." Like actually give direct instruction, not just rules.
Mhm. I'm going to piggyback on that to say not only should the rules do that, the rules should also know what the rules are doing.
Mm.
One of the strengths of 5e and of D&D in general is that it can be used in a variety of different ways by a variety of different DMs to create fun experiences for a variety of different players.
Mm.
So when we get to our main section, we're going to talk about combat. And so the combat rules create a game that is more of a tactical war game. And not everyone wants to play that type of game. So DMs are often forced to or decide to make tweaks to those rules or use a less strict version of those rules to create a more narrative structure.
Yeah.
And so, what I want the rules to do is to say to the DM, if you are running a more narrative game, here are some ways that you can take these rules we've given you and change them a bit. So you are not spending 5 minutes on each player's turn. You can instead be getting to the part of the game that you like, which is narrating.
Mm.
Uh, that's what I want the rules to do. I want the rules to admit, finally, after all these years, what D&D actually is and embrace it rather than sort of hand wave it and force DMs to figure it out on their own. So I think that's what you were saying, Teos,
Yeah.
only more. I want to get
No.
more specific.
Yeah, and I think that angle of what the rules are saying is really critical, and that they explain that they aren't the entirety of everything. That is really true. All right, another one I would do is to say that the examples of play, I think there could be a more varied set of examples of play that help you figure out your approach to the game and help you ease into it. So I don't feel like there are enough on ramps in what's written. And maybe this is really something that should go in the adventures, like the starter set adventure type thing, but that it would really give you that help you develop your approach and your take versus assuming that all games are sort of the same. Help you find that way that you want to operate and do that, because I think a lot of times DMs find it super intimidating when they're starting to sort of become a DM versus find their style, and that difference I think is pretty key.
Mhm. I would like 6E to simplify the game
Mm.
to help make the GM's job easier. help simplify the game by not necessarily eliminating player options, but by making the player options more easy, more easier for the DM to be able to understand. So you sort of know what the players are doing rather than relying solely on the player's knowledge to know what the player is doing.
Mm.
And this, a new edition or a new version of an edition is the perfect opportunity to do that. To make a basic version of the game where what the players can do is simplified, so you as the game master can sort of understand what's going on and help new players along because it is a simpler version of the game.
So I disagree a little bit. And so maybe this becomes almost what my suggestion would be is know how to deal with what the players bring to the table without knowing what it is that they're bringing to the table. And what I mean by that is, in 4th edition, there was a real big difference for DMs where there were now so many powers for all the different classes and so many species and all of that, that really almost no DM could know everything that showed up. And so this was a big change. Like, it was a big mental change for DMs to suddenly go like, well, I don't know what you do. You're the only person who could possibly know all the things you do. And now my role shifts to be trusting you and playing off of whatever it is that you do. And I think that that's a good part of the game to have, because there will inevitably be at some point in an edition so many options. And if 5e really is backwards compatible, we already have almost an unknowable number of options already. And certainly if you include third party. So you can't know what your players bring to the table. It won't make sense. It won't be simple. And given that, it's how do you work off of it rather than try to, you're not trying to understand it. You're trying to trust them and play off of it so it fits into your campaign, whatever your campaign style is. And that's the hard part, right? Like, how do you keep it from unbalancing or breaking or pushing a strange direction?
I don't disagree with you. I'm talking about things like the Artificer, which seems to add new rules as you go, right? So if you're going to have this type of class that sort of breaks the rules of all the other classes, it needs to work in a way that is somewhat compatible with those other classes. So when you, as the Artificer, when you create your little cat cannon that can shoot things or shoot temporary hit points, right? That's the sort of thing where if it's going to be used, it needs to be used in a way that is not completely divergent from where the rules are. So it should work like an animal companion as opposed to a whole new thing. So you can understand how the animal companion works, and then you can work from there. And a familiar should work like an animal companion, which should work like the Artificer's cannon, which should work like, that's what I'm talking about. And then if you start with those base rules where everything makes sense, when you add new rules, if you're going to create a new thing, great, create a new thing, but then have a set of rules that work with that new thing. So you're just learning the basics once, and then everything else sort of flows into that thing. And I understand that people, there are certain subsets of players that want complication and they want all the things, and that's fine. I'm one of those people sometimes too. But if we want to actually make the GM's job easier, then that's what we need.
No, that's true. The Artificer is certainly one where if you hear it for the first time as either a player or a DM, you'll make assumptions that will be wrong, because the Artificer's cannon has this weird way of being, partially like a creature, partially not. And it can lead to things like a DM that never attacks it because or a player that never, makes a saving throw for it or whatever, because it's in this weird space. And that's true. It would be good if it, A, were like other things. And if not, B, at least really truly tells everybody up front, here's how it really is governed, so that it could be easy to use at the table. But it's not. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Any other things that you would want the edition to do to make the GM's job easier?
So, I mean, a question that I heard the other day is, are we going to cover the Dungeon Master's Guide the way we've done Player's Handbook, which is an interesting question. So maybe listeners can tell us what they think. But there is a lot that I would do around reorganizing the DMG so that it is
Mhm.
not just a great inspirational tool, which it is, but also a better guidebook, a better teaching vehicle, and a better toolkit, which other editions have done better than the 5e DMG. And I think having that book be more of a go-to resource would be helpful. And I think that's a thing that all Dungeon Masters guides have struggled with recently, which is why does a DM open it? Right?
Mhm.
Like why do they go
Right.
back to it the way that a player might go back to the player's handbook? And it's not an easy question to answer once you really think about it.
Yeah. I think one of the things, not necessarily the rules could do, but Wizards could do is either on their own or in a partnership with someone, have more videos of,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you're a DM. These are the things that you're going to potentially have to do. And you could break it down into building a world. Everything that the Dungeon Master's Guide talks about, except in a form that is a little more digestible and
Yeah.
not hands on, eyes on. Uh, so you can understand and you can see it in action as it's being described. This is what you do before the game. This is what you do when the game is happening, and this is how it all connects.
Well, this maybe segues nicely to this topic of Dungeon 23.
True story. Dungeon23 has been a hot topic recently, so we wanted to talk about it really quickly. Uh, where did it start? Well, Dungeon23 comes from a tweet from Shawn McCoy, who worked for, I think it's called Tuesday Night Games, which made the game Mothership. And this is the idea that each day in 2023, you create one dungeon room, and it can be like just a sketch and some ideas. And then you can turn after a week you'll have 7 rooms, and some people have said, well, that could be a dungeon level. Some people say make the dungeon level once per month, and then so you'd have a 30 or 31 or 28 room level for your dungeon, and at the end of 2023 you will have a 12 level complete mega dungeon. And this is cool.
Yeah.
This is like NaNoWriMo but for D&D.
Yeah.
And so what do you think about that?
I think it's awesome. It also sounds, and I've heard this a bit, intimidating and almost unrealistic. I think for most people, this almost needs its own guide to do and examples. And I think, unfortunately, what you're going to see if you look at social media is you're going to see the best and most unattainable levels are going to be the ones that are most shared, right? The incredible description of a room. And there are already some people who are drawing some incredible drawings. I lack that kind of talent. And then you have people who are, they're taking like a Dyson's logo map, and then they're taking, or something else, a generator. And so then the map is done, via some other mechanism. Either someone else made it or it's a generator, and then they're playing off of that. There are a lot of ways to do it. And I'm not doing it because I lack the time. I'm already doing in my life. I'm creating already pretty much on a daily basis. So I don't need the stimulus the way someone else would benefit from it. But I do really believe in that idea that if you create often, it is better for your brain, and it will keep you sharp and focused, and it'll keep you it'll help you be a more capable creator, a more creative creator if you think through this. So I think it's an awesome exercise. I'm a little worried about how much of a work it can come off as being, and I'd hate to see people crash
Mhm.
over it, right, or feel frustrated by it. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, I think like you say, it's a good idea just to get started. Just to, if you don't do a lot of game design, or if you're not a DM that makes a dungeon every week for your players, um, this is a good way to at least get your feet wet.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, that can be a lot of work depending on if you map it, if you stat it out, if you write the full descriptions and figure out what monsters go in. That's a lot of work. I would almost, if especially my suggestion, if you're new to the game or new to DMing or new to design, is to, rather than do one room a day, do one room a week.
Yeah.
And each day take a different part of that, designing that, and do that. So
Mm-hmm.
day one, f- draw it on your map. Day 2, figure out thematically what you want in this room. Day 3, write a description of the room. Day 4, populate the room with whatever things that you want in it, monsters or traps, or and
Yeah.
that way you are taking the work that, and it can, if you're doing this, it can take you a good couple of hours to, or more, to make a complete room with everything that you need in it. So this sort of divides up that work, and it gives you time to miss a day, and you can, I'll sketch out the room and figure out what's going to go in it instead,
Yeah.
so I think, like anything else, anything that gets people creating and thinking is good. The schedule could be a little much, for sure.
Yeah, and the other way you can tackle it is to just have it be the most basic thing, right? Give yourself only 10 minutes and see what you get in 10 minutes, right? Just 10 minutes of like things you're talking about, right? What's the premise of the room? What's the goal? What are the creatures or engagement mechanics in there? What do you like? And just done. Like, it doesn't have to be in some format. It doesn't have to be a thing you're going to publish or share. Just write on some scrap paper. It doesn't matter, right? Just come up with the ideas. And that's a great exercise. Almost the equivalent of, you wake up, what did you dream, right? Write that down. Like, that can be so interesting a thing to do. For the same kind of ideas. It's inspirational, it's introspective, it's creative, right? Like, just so don't overdo it. Because if you make it work, you definitely, it's like working out, right? Like, if working out is a chore, you're not going to do it all the time. And so you have to make it fun and rewarding so that you stick to that plan, right?
Right. I mean, do it like you would a journal, almost like Teos is saying. Wake up, and what's the first word you think of? Write that word down, and then when you go back to do your dungeon later in the day, make the theme of that dungeon whatever words you wrote. If it's a color, red, then everything in the dungeon is red. Well, why is it red?
Yeah.
So you're now already designing with just one word prompting you, and that can be useful.
Yeah. The other thing is
So
it's
if
always,
you do Dungeon 23, go ahead.
just that it's also fun to pull in inspiration, right? Like, creating your own ideas is great too, but also to, it's okay to spend a day looking through other dungeons and just spend a day on inspiration is okay too, right? And then you can just write empty room. I was inspired by other things.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you do end up doing Dungeon 23 in any way, shape, or form, let us know what you've been up to and how it's working out for you. We'd love to hear about it. Now we get to our news and commentary section, and boy, we were off for a week, and did things happen? Apparently, yes. The first thing is what I will call the OGL elephant in the room. So probably minutes after we finished recording our last show, Wizards of the Coast put out a statement via D&D Beyond talking about their thoughts on what would be in a new open gaming license. If you have listened to Teos and I for the last 6 months, you have heard our thoughts on the open gaming license, what it has meant, what it will mean going forward. And I think it's safe to say you can go back and listen to those, and everything we've said still holds true.
Yeah.
Nothing that's been released so far has contradicted anything that we've imagined or thought or considered. So, but what we do want to talk about is what Wizards actually said via this statement. I'm going to let Teos give you a summary of what the thing said.
So the first thing they did, and we've heard this now a couple of times recently, is it reasserts that 6e 1D&D will be backwards compatible with 5e. So that's good in that they're clearly not abandoning that as a goal. And they did this in the context of the OGL to say, like, well, all your old content that you're doing, it's not going to be trashed. But I would say there is the story of 3rd edition and 3.5. We've talked about that on the show before. And so that's not I wouldn't say that fully calms me, but at least it's still a goal of theirs to have some element of backwards compatibility, right? That is the goal, and they're saying it now several times. Second thing they did is they said there's going to be a new version of the SRD for 6e, and that's a big deal because a system reference document, it contains the parts you can use. And it has, it took a while for the SRD to come out for 5e, and then it was never updated again, even though all of this new content kept coming out. And so a big question is there going to be, say an SRD that uses language like a D&D test or a D20 test, sorry. Is there going to be an artificer in an SRD? Is there going to be any number of things that don't currently exist in the SRD, whether it's new material or material for 5th edition that hasn't been in the SRD in the past? And, we don't know what this SRD will have, but at least we know a new one will come out. So that's great news. A lot of people didn't think that would happen. And then we were told there will be a new version of the OGL, version 1.1, in early 2023. So sometime soon, we may see this. And that's where it gets interesting, because the new version is said to clarify that the OGL only covers tabletop games with print media or static files like PDFs. It's not meant to cover things like video games or movies, or they use the idea of NFTs. And given that Wizards of the Coast is trying to expand their brand and be all these other types of things, you could see why they might want to include that kind of a language. We are now also hearing, as part of the wording that's in there, that you have to accept the license. So that means you're sort of signing it. And this is something that 4th edition had. So you're not just using the license, putting in your product, you are accepting it, and you are telling Wizards of the Coast what you're selling. If you make over $50,000 in OGL related revenue in a year, you have to report that to Wizards of the Coast. And if you make over $750,000, which they say only 20 creators would qualify currently, you must pay a royalty to Wizards of the Coast starting next year. Lastly, you must put a creator product badge on your work. So some sort of signifier that shows that it's third party and not official. So some people were calmed by this, Shawn, but others became as nervous or more nervous than they already were. And they already had been pretty nervous, which is why Wizards felt they had to make this statement. And I think the reason for the nervousness is really around the open gaming license, in that legal experts seem to believe that all open gaming licenses are available, and even what Wizards has said in the past indicates that the open gaming license never goes away. So a new version would be, I guess, instead of that previous one, and you're now signing this, but why would you do that? Why would you take that on, right? So when they say, like, you can't make a movie, for example, well, that's with this new license. Couldn't someone use the old license to make a movie? It's unclear sort of why Wizards feels the OGL is being updated and why we do this. Like, let's say you make over $750,000 a year. Why would you want the new license? And so maybe the new license is a requirement for the new SRD, right? Maybe that's sort of the carrot that goes with the stick. Or maybe there is access to the VTT, or there's access to some other marketplace, or who knows? So one of the big questions is why, what exactly will the language of the OGL be? Will it look like the 4th edition GSL? We've talked about this before. It had a number of aspects that made it unpalatable for most creators. Or will it be great? And there's just so much that's good about the new SRD and the new open gaming license that everybody wants it. And it's completely great to want to pay a royalty if you make more than $750,000. It's totally worth it to report your income if it's over $50,000. We don't know that, right? We're going to have to see those documents to really know what the benefits and detriments are, right?
Right. I think this statement from Wizards said a lot while saying very little. What it did say, if we can take it at its face value, is, hey, if you're a creator who just wants to create open gaming license content and you're not making, a ton of money off of it, nothing is going to change for you. They came right out and said that in this statement. And I take that at face value.
Well, I don't.
Okay.
Because of the GSL, right?
I take that. Right. And so I take that at face value for this statement.
Mm-hmm.
I also recognize the fact that people online are saying, oh, the next open gaming license is so bad because blank, blank, blank. We have not seen the next open gaming license. Wizards of the Coast said some things that would likely be in the next open gaming license, but we have not seen it.
Right.
We
We
do
don't
not
know.
know any of the details of it. It could be the greatest thing, it could be the worst thing, but we don't know. And we won't know until it is put out there. And even after it's put out there, it may be gone over by lawyers, it may be gone over by business people, and it may change
Yeah. Yeah,
before
for
a
sure.
final version is made. Um, I I have deep down in my heart a strong hope that the people making the decisions at Wizards of the Coast on this recognize the importance of community created content to the game, because it is not the main part, but it is a huge part of the success of 5th edition.
Yeah.
This third party creative community that has added so much to the game. The One of the big, corporate idioms is win-win-win, right? We want solutions where everyone wins on all sides of things.
Yeah.
And if they understand the importance of third-party content and they want everyone to win with this, they can make that happen.
Yeah.
Now, is everyone going to be happy? Of course not. You're going to have third-party creators out there who want to, like Paizo did with 3rd edition, use a hatred of the corporation to be a marketing tool for them. So no matter what Wizards of the Coast does, even if it's the greatest thing that's ever been done legally in the game design industry, people will say, "Oh, look, they're trying to steal from everyone. Please come play our, third-party
Yeah.
game."
Yeah.
We can just ignore it. We can just ignore that. That's just marketing. So we want to. I hope that we will see a situation where everyone can win
Yeah.
from this.
Yeah, and what's written here could be that, right? And I think that the dangers of it are all things that don't necessarily, well, that don't exist in any of what's been written. They're just potential, and the fact that they want to update the gaming license makes people nervous, but it may be that there is no reason to be nervous, right? The big dangers are things like when you write for the DMs Guild, you no longer own that material, and you get royalties from it, but you don't own it, and you can't transfer it somewhere. If the DMs Guild goes down, the license doesn't revert to you. You don't gain it back. You can't sell it in some other way. And so those are the kind of things, the kind of language that it'll be very interesting to see what comes out, whether there is something like that, right? So 4th edition's GSL had provisions in it that allowed Wizards to change the language at any time in the future, right? And we see that with all kinds of, iTunes stores and things like that. And you can understand why the company may want that, but what it means for creators, you don't know whether tomorrow you can sell what you can sell today, or whether the terms will change. And those kinds of agreements are very difficult, certainly for your largest players, but even for small players, they are significant. But we don't know what that will be, so we're going to have to wait and see. But we did put some great links in the show notes. The Alexandrian had a very good retrospective on the Open Gaming License and where it came from. There's also Alex Cameron, Mark Greenberg discussing on a podcast about the legality of it, and great questions like, what can you publish without an OGL? There are fascinating discussions out there to be had, and what is the benefit of an OGL? When do you need it? Why do you need it? What can you do with it? Are all fairly open questions in a lot of ways. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of this, Shawn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we go from the legal to the mechanical. The 1D&D playtest survey for the cleric and for species is out. So you can go to D&D Beyond and give them your opinions. And you can also go back for our coverage of the cleric in previous episodes.
Yeah, I'm super curious whether the number.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm very curious whether the number of people filling out this survey will drop, especially with the holidays, but also with whether, with how long these surveys can be. Even though it's less material this time, I'm curious whether the number filling out will really take a dive down.
Yep, we will see if they let us know. In their on their marketing sorts of things where they talk about it. If they do tell us. The Adventures League blog has been updated. There are new documents at the Yawning Portal where Chris Tulloch is providing news on updated player and DM documents. They are updated to pull in the information together into one place and account for the new campaigns that we have recently discussed. And while we are discussing the Adventures League, I'm going to jump right in and say, hey, you can sign up for Winter Fantasy 2023. Registration and sign-up should be now live. Winter Fantasy is taking place in Fort Wayne, Indiana, February 1st through the 5th. Winter Fantasy is using tabletop events this year for badge and ticket purchases. And I will be there, mostly playing, but I will be running 2 Agents of the Empire games, Wednesday and Thursday nights.
And that's
and
the
Teos,
new.
You're going to be there as well.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I've played one of those Agents of the Empire. That's the new Fables Ghostfire subscription ongoing adventure.
Yep.
That's cool. I'll be signing up for that soon.
Yep. Cool. Starting January 1st, which is yesterday as we record, the new Fables adventure has come out called Agents of the Empire, a 6-episode ongoing adventure where you get 1 episode per month, and each episode has 4 chapters that should give you 4 nights of 4 hours of play. So you have a full campaign. I have read it. I have run the first little segment, which I'm going to be running again at Winter Fantasy. And so you can go to ghostfiregaming.com to sign up for that. It's really fun stuff.
Sweet.
What are you running at Winter Fantasy?
That's a great question. I think I did get my information. I am running Dragonlance. That's what I just looked at it right now. That's how far behind I am. I know that I submitted various interseries and I just confirmed. I'm running a bunch of Dragonlance. I'm excited to do that. That's gonna be fun.
Cool. So, if you are in Fort Wayne, Indiana, or that area, the first weekend of February, stop by and say hi to Teos and myself, and we'd love to talk with you. Back to more news, we can talk about ENWorld in a couple of different ways. First is their Vote for Your Favorite Podcast contest. There are 2 categories that you could vote for: talk podcasts and actual play podcasts. Someone was kind enough to nominate this podcast, Mastering Dungeons. So whoever did that, thank you so much. We appreciate your support. And you can go to enworld.org and log in and vote for your favorite podcasts on either of those.
Link in our show notes.
ENWorld is also looking for columnists. Specifically, they are looking for someone to report on Adventures League. So if you're an Adventures League player, game master, administrator, and you are looking to break into publishing, they pay 6 cents a word, which isn't the greatest, but these sorts of columns are a great way to get the experience of publishing game material. It often, sharpens your sword, if you will, in writing, gets you in the publishing frame of mind. And I know that a lot of game designers have started in a way. I think James Hake, for example, was an editor there at ENWorld, and James Introcaso may also have been. So, there are many people that started their game design or game industry work in something like this. So there's a link in the show notes, so you can go to enworld.org and read all about what they're looking for in a columnist. Scott Fitzgerald Gray has released his Core20 RPG preview. I'm going to let Teos take this one.
Yeah, this is really cool. If you are a fan of our show, you have heard us talk about and with Scott Gray many times. He's a renowned editor. He is an incredible designer. He's worked on all kinds of products. Most of the D&D things on your shelf that are from, certainly 3rd edition on, if you pick it up, it probably has his name in it somewhere. We're always in awe of his work. And he is launching a new RPG called Core20, and he's begun to share previews. He shared it, I believe, on both Mastodon and Twitter. And we've included a link to the first document in our show notes. It talks through building your character, and the emphasis that Scott places becomes really clear. The emphasis he places on unique characters with a strong sense of story. This is all about character generation. So really looking forward to this. Very happy for Scott that he's doing this. This is really cool.
Yeah, I am looking very forward to seeing what Scott comes up with. I've talked about it in other places, but I'm going to keep a sharp eye on what Mr. Gray has been up to.
Mm-hmm.
Teos and I have been up to something. We were on the GMs Magazine show with Paco Garcia Reed Jean and Chris Sims talking about how to make great D&D encounters. It was a great discussion. Loved talking with both Paco and Chris about what makes great encounters, how to create them, how they fit into adventures. Chris is a developer, editor, writer of D&D stuff along the lines of Scott, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Chris's name is in a lot of 3rd edition, 4th edition stuff, and even some 5th edition stuff. And so his wealth of knowledge that he shares is amazing, and it was great to trade ideas and stories and concepts with them.
Yeah, really fun. Great conversation, full of tips. So do give it a watch or a listen, because I thought we really put together some really interesting topics and great ideas. A lot of inspiration there for how to make interesting encounters. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's part of a series called Making Great. So it's like Making Great blank, and they've had Ed Greenwood on, they've had a bunch of other industry folks on to talk about different things. So check that out, and also check out something from one Teos Abadia. His Success in Role-Playing Games series now has social media and NDAs as a topic. So what have you been talking about with that?
I've been busy, with all this discussion around non-disclosure agreements. I thought it'd be good to walk through what a typical NDA looks like, what's in one, and why companies want you to sign one, and why that makes great sense. And if you work with a lot of people on projects, why you may want to have people sign one, why you may want to sign one as a creator yourself, and what does it mean? Should you worry about it? Generally, no. So talk through all of that. And then the social media episode just launched this week. And it looks at ways to try to make social media as healthy as possible, and think through what your goals are as a creator, right? Focus specifically on, as an RPG creator, what can you do with social media? What modes can you choose to operate in so that it's an effective channel, but also a healthy experience?